Hello, welcome to the Stubborn Tortoise podcast. I'm Donna Pasdera. So I'm starting this sort of came about organically. I've decided to start another subset of interviews or parts of this podcast that I think are important. I really don't want this to become like other podcasts, but I do think that this is unique enough that I think I can get away with it. Okay. So anyway, I'm calling it Profiles in Courage, and that's a very cliched title. It's something from John F. Kennedy, and it was a book he wrote back in the day, and I feel like that kind of sums up what these interviews are about. My first one was with Ben Garcia. You may recall from a few weeks ago. And then today's interview is with Agatha Hakalani. Oh God, I hope I said it right. Let me make sure I said that right. Halekulani Kerr. I don't know why I can't say her name, but anyway, she is amazing. She is one of our coaches for the San Antonio off-road runners. I have known her for 3 years, and we're friends. And she always has impressed me with just her genuine spirit about trail running. And so it's very interesting in this interview to hear, what she has to say. And I learned some things about her that I did not know, and which is always fun. But she's done some incredible ultras, and just seems to have like the mindset. Yeah. So, and also the episode art is Agatha with her daughter, Aurora, who is 10. It's one of her 2 daughters. And that was at a race last summer, I think in Illinois. It was called the Temptation 200, which she did 150K, which is still quite a bit. I shouldn't even say still, it is quite a bit. But anyway, so without further ado, let's tune into my interview with Agatha, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Okay. We are recording. So I am here with Agatha. Agatha, please pronounce your middle last name.
Well, my full name is Agatha Halekulani Kerr.
Hakalani. Okay, yeah, it's just like it looks. Okay, I was afraid I was going to bungle it or whatever. So, and yeah, so welcome. So happy to have you here. You were the second of my, I guess what I want to call like Profiles in Courage. Maybe that'll be the new tagline for this thing. I don't know. But anyway, yes, it's funny. Several people have approached me and they're like, "You need to talk to Agatha," and I'm like, of course, so, and it's funny. I've known you for about 3 years, I think, and you were pretty much the first person I met through the off-road group with the SAR. And I just remember you because you may not even remember this, but I just remember you were this very kind, giving person, and you kind of hung back with, those of us who weren't that fast. And, and I just thought you were really a lovely person. And so I always have wanted to thank you for that. And, that hasn't been lost on me. But anyway, so tell me about your, first of all, did you grow up in San Antonio, or where did you grow up?
I did not. I do remember that first season in ORR with you, Donna, and I loved running with you. I felt the same way about you. I just felt drawn to you, that you had some really interesting stories and were such a unique person with that inside drive, which is what resonates with me. So I enjoyed that. I grew up between California and Connecticut. So we lived on a boat in California in the winters, and we lived in a cabin at a country club in Connecticut in the summers, and we drove cross country spring and fall.
Oh my God, how cool is that? So why did you guys live on a boat? Because
my daddy was a sailor. Yeah, he just loved the water. So he worked in theater. He was an executive producer and actually had a Tony Award from a play that he produced on Broadway.
Nice.
But his love was the sea. So we lived on a motor sailor.
Wow, that's so cool. I don't think I think I've only known one other person who's lived on a boat. And so that's to me is like incredible. How many kids in your family?
I was raised as an only child. I do have two half brothers and a half sister, and I'm very close to them. But my sister is the youngest, and she's 20 years older than me. So
Oh,
they were already out and grown and gone by the time I came along.
yeah, you're kind of, and how old are you now?
I'm almost 43.
Okay, you're just a kid. It's so great though. Okay, wow, California, Connecticut, that must have been something else. What part of California?
I was born in Berkeley, and we had our boat docked in Berkeley until I was 5, and then we sailed to San Diego and we were docked there.
God, how nice. I love California. If I could go move someplace else, and I know it's incredibly expensive and the traffic is stupid and and I know, I mean, but I haven't been there for about 20 years and it was terrible even then, but I would love to go back there just because I love the sea and the mountains and I just think it just I don't know, there's just something about it. Even like when I was a kid living in Ohio, I can just remember sitting there in these really awful winters going, God, I wish I lived in California. So, oh, and there goes my other cat. Anyway, so how did running get into were you an active kid? I mean, what was your background like?
Well, it's interesting because I really didn't do anything. I didn't do any sports, but I got my sense of wanderlust and my love of the outdoors from all those trips and living on the boat. And we would take our trips in a VW camper. And in those days, you didn't have to stay in a campground. You could just camp wherever you wanted when you found a good place to stop. So that's
Fun.
what we would do. But I never thought of it as really specifically outdoors. It was just sort of how life was. And being mostly homeschooled, I didn't know how to play any sports. I didn't participate in any of that. I was never a runner. When I was in my mid 30s, I was inspired by another mom who had kids around the same age as my kids who lived in my neighborhood. She was doing a half marathon. And I looked at her and I thought, well, if she can do that, maybe I can do that too. And so I trained for 6 months to run my first half marathon.
That's
And
fun.
I thought I was going to die when I finished. And then I promptly signed up for a marathon.
Oh, yeah,
So,
we all do that. Yes.
yeah. So I enjoyed it, but that was sort of a brief. I did a little bit of road running for that first year or two. And then some stuff had happened and I had to not run at all until 2018. And then in January 2018, some of my friends said, hey, we're doing this trail thing. Do you want to come check it out? And I thought, okay, well, I like my friends and I was like hiking. So sure. And I went with them and just discovered trail running.
That's so cool. Um, I guess I should have backed up a little bit on this. How did you end up in San Antonio?
Oh,
I know. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I'm sitting here going, wait a minute. I left out that part. And I should know this.
That's okay. I actually went to school early. So I went to a college that was right near my home since I was young. And then it didn't really fit my personality and I didn't enjoy it. So I transferred around, went to a couple different schools, went to study abroad. And then when I came back from Australia, I really wanted to go somewhere warm. And so I did my due diligence and researched the majors and the diversity of the schools and all that type of thing. And I landed on UT.
Oh,
And the
fun.
year that I came to UT was the year that Ricky Williams won the Heisman Trophy.
Oh my God.
So
Cool.
it was just all go big or go home, which fit my personality perfectly. And I fell in love with Texas. I fell in love with the people. And I actually did move back to California for a year after I graduated from UT Austin. And I discovered that the people were not what I remembered. Just, I have not found any other people that compare to Texans, to the friendliness and the heart and the genuineness. So I came right back. And then I've been in Texas since then.
That's so cool. So what part of Australia were you in?
I studied at the Australian National University in Canberra, which is the capital
Yeah.
of Australia.
That
Yeah.
way, yeah. I know
Yeah.
it's
And
like
then
far from everything. Yeah.
yeah. And then I
Not
traveled
anything.
around while I was there too. So
Did you get to Darwin?
I did not because I wasn't young enough to rent a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So I went up the Gold Coast. I went to Surfers Paradise. I went up the Red Center to Alice Springs. I went across the 12 Apostles, out
Oh,
through the
nice.
coastline, but I did not get to the Northern Territory or to Western Australia.
That's still cool. That's my dream. That's one of my dreams, because I have some acquaintances that live in Darwin, and I actually have another friend. Again, we've known each other for over 20 years, but it was through LiveJournal. That's how I know all my Australian friends. But he is a news presenter in, I want to say, Sydney. And yeah, I know. And he's kind of a big deal. You know, he's had a book published and all this. And he's like your age, you know. So I'm just like, I've got to get over there before I die, you know. So I'm so impressed. I did not know that about you. So that's pretty cool. So, well, I'm happy that you like Texas. And yeah, I'm a transplant too, as you know. So, you know, I've been here a little longer, but still, you know, but up here, since 2017, I think, something like that. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was in the Valley for 13 years. So that's very different, very different. I mean, the terrain is different, you know, but that's where I started my trail running journey, if you will. So what did you think the first time when you started doing this trail running thing? Did that just sort of, the scales fell from your eyes and you were just like, oh my God, I've seen it.
It really was. I remember it being this magical feeling where I had always loved hiking, and I had just started running on roads not too long before that, but I never knew you were allowed to combine the two. I thought, I'd always been told, don't run on the trails, it's dangerous. And so the first time that I ran on a trail, I remember just being blown away by, like, wow, you can play out here, you can do both of these things together. And it was magical. And then as we started running longer and I was capable of each run that we were doing, it really gave me a new identity almost. And I remember specifically the first run where I said, oh, I am a trail runner. It was out at Pedernales Falls, and it was with the San Antonio Roadrunners Off-Road Runners group. And it was
a couple
supposed
of years
to be
ago.
Yeah, that was 2018. That was January 2018.
Oh, yeah, that's how I met Jessica. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it was supposed to be a 16-mile run, and the trail was a little long, as is normal. And it was about 18 miles, and I had taken my first hard fall, which I had a scar for like a year from that fall. And when we got done, I just realized, oh, I just ran difficult terrain and I survived. I made it. So my journey went from there.
That's so cool. Yeah. It was really cold that day too. I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I remember Jessica and I sitting in, you know, Jessica, right? Jessica Kesterman. Yeah. That's how I met her. And we ended up sitting in Shalene's car. I think her Prius, because we were trying to stay warm, waiting for everybody else. That's a hard place to run 18 miles. I've done, you know, the nighttime 30K over there a few times, but, you know, and it's weird because I end up DNFing it because it's the first summer race. I know, TMI, but I ended up growing up because of the heat and everything. I'm not used to it yet, but yeah, so my hat's off to you for that. So
thank you.
So what was your first trail race?
Well, my first trail race was a 10K in the hill country, and I was using it as training for something else. Well, no, let me back up. My very first trail race was Prickly Pear.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I had not trained on a trail. I had not run on a trail. That was before I knew about ORR, the off-road runners.
Yeah.
And I had just done my first marathon, and then I heard about it and I thought, well, I can do that. So a month after my first marathon, I did my first Prickly Pear.
And which distance did you do?
50K.
Oh, crazy. I'm still not brave enough to try that one.
Well, since then I've done about 40 ultras, and I know we talked a little bit about how I found my trail running identity. I feel like finding my ultra running identity was something completely different and is really where I reside. So for me, trail running and ultra running are sort of melded into one thing. And I know that not everybody that runs trails runs ultras, and that is completely okay. The trail has magic of its own, no matter what distance you're out there for. But ultras are really something unique and something special.
Yeah. So what is it about ultras that draws you? Because I know you do some pretty long distances. And again, I'm really impressed with that. But I do think that's true. I think, you know, that first 50K or that first, trail race is sort of like the gateway drug or something. And then you're like, it's like me after Rocky Raccoon this year, I did not train well at all for that, but I finished and I didn't die. So, but I was just like, I'm never going to do that again. And then I'm just like, oh, shut up, and so now I'm ready, yeah, we're already plotting to do, the 100K at Rocky next year. So, I don't think my days are numbered on ultras either. So what is it for you though about ultras? Because man, they're a lot. I think the mental game is a big, you can train, but I think you got to get your brain in sync to do that. Am I right about that?
Oh yeah. Everything that you think you'll need to do in training is true. You do need that physical base, but that's only about 5% of what it takes to complete an ultra. The other 95% is the mental, emotional side of it, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about that experience. It's, and I know this because there's lows and highs, and sometimes, you want to quit. And, first of all, have you ever DNF'd a race?
Okay. Yes, I have. Let me back up and answer your first part of the question first, and then I'll go to the DNFs because they sort of meld together in the story. So I feel like once I started running ultras, God started placing people in my path, literally, since we're on a path, who kind of had the same story, and different people, different walks of life, different stories, but the heart was the same, that they were just people who were hurting and separated from God for whatever reason. And my favorite thing about loving people is getting to be let into their lives and to share my own, just that place of authenticity and vulnerability. And it is so much easier to access that type of relationship and form that kind of bond in an ultra, because all the walls are already down, all the emotions are raw, you're giving everything that you can, there's no time for pretense. And that's my favorite space to live in with my friends in everyday life, but also during ultra races. So I feel like the ultra running is a gift from God that he gave me later in life. I did not have this capability growing up, but it's both a gift and a responsibility, because I get to use that time to listen to people's stories, listen to their fears, walk through that journey with them, and sort of speak into their lives from my own experience. Anything that we have in common or that might encourage them to keep going, keep moving forward.
So. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, I met a woman at Rocky this year who was doing her first 50 miler and was not dressed for the experience at all, and really was just hiking it. And so we just hiked together. And but I ended up giving her my raincoat because she was wearing this little skirt and this little t-shirt, short sleeve t-shirt, and it's like when the temperatures were dropping, Texas. And, I was all layered up. I was fine, but I just brought the raincoat in case, but I was like, here, take this, and so, and it just, it helped her finish, and it made me feel good to do things like that. So, but anyway, I'm sorry.
No, that's a great story. That's what I love about ultra running, is that it doesn't matter what place people are in or how fast they are. If somebody is hurting or is in need, they're going to stop. They're going to take care of them. They're going to take a minute. Ultra running is a place where we all start on the same starting line, and you might end up getting to do miles with people that you think of as heroes and think are in a different league from you. And then you get out there and it turns out that they're human, just like you, just like me. And that's one of my favorite things.
I love the egalitarian nature of trail running. Yeah, because I think it is true. I mean, it's like, very few trail races that I know of anyway, maybe because I'm immortal, but you don't have those like corrals and things like that, where the elites get to start and, things like that for the most part. And yeah, and they get lost, they, suffer and, don't do as well as they thought they might. And I think that's what's exciting about it also, because it is so unpredictable, so it's, I don't know, it's my thing too. So.
It really is exciting. And I liked what you said. I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but heroes of courage or stories of courage,
profiles
something like
of courage. Yeah.
Profiles in courage. Yeah. There was a quote that I read this morning that I was planning to share with you, so it fits in perfectly. It's courage is the power to let go of the familiar. That's by Raymond Lindquist.
I love it.
And
I love
yeah, that really resonated with me because so many times we talk about going outside of your comfort zone, or life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. And for me, that's not really applicable anymore. My comfort zone sort of doesn't have edges anymore. I have a bubble, but it's huge. So it's not so much about making myself uncomfortable as it is about just trying new things and going new places. And for me, the core of why I keep doing these crazy, crazy long distances is that I can. So I just don't feel like I've hit my limit yet. And I want to get to that point where I leave it all out there. I'm not the fastest runner. I've been getting faster and going further than I used to. Absolutely. But I haven't reached that point of just nothing left when I cross the finish yet. So the two DNFs, going back to your earlier question, the two DNFs that I've had were both when I attempted a new distance that was completely out of the realm of what I'd done before. So my very first one, my furthest distance was 100K, and I was going for my first 100 miler at Brazos. And I actually DNF'd, that was December 2018 at mile 67. And I attribute that to the mental game, like you were talking about. I just put my faith in what would carry me through in the wrong things, in external things, instead of the internal.
And what do you mean by that?
I just sort of relied on what I expected circumstances to be and what I expected as far as pacers and crew. And then when those things didn't materialize the way I had planned, I wasn't prepared to take on the challenge myself. So I learned that pacers and crew are incredible and they could definitely impact a race positively, but it's not enough to just rely on that. It's really about knowing that I can do it, that I'm going to attempt the challenge. And then if those things go the way that's planned, that's icing on the cake and it helps for a better race. So
that makes a lot of sense.
And then I didn't have any more DNFs until last year. And last year was when I attempted the 600K at Tour de los Tejas. And so I made
people, how much is 600K? Because I can't do math right now.
It's about 383 miles. I made it 279 miles, which is about 450K. So we started from the Capitol building in Austin. I believe there were 9 of us at the start line. And then you weren't allowed to have pacers. And we ran down from Austin through Luling out to Bastrop State Park outside of Houston. That's where I hit 200 miles. And then from Houston back up towards LaGrange, and I scratched right before LaGrange. And then you would have finished back at the Capitol. And there were 4 finishers of that race. Wow. So knowing what I know now, I feel like, of course I didn't finish. I was so inexperienced. It is so completely different trying to run that many multi-days and be out there moving in a point-to-point race as opposed to the 152 miles that I'd done at Jackalope Jam or the 101 miles that I'd done at 3 days at the fair. This was just a whole different animal. So,
and that was on road too, right?
Yes, it was. But the good thing was during COVID and all of those shutdowns, I ran 16 virtual ultras that year.
Oh my God.
Because of where I lived, I didn't have access to any trails without getting in the car. We weren't supposed to be driving around. So I started running solo ultras virtually on the roads through the hill country, just all around. And I feel like Tour de los Tejas being last February was the perfect training opportunity, because normally I don't ever run on the roads. I don't like roads. I don't run alone. I run with the group. I coach, I mentor, all that type of stuff. So just to be in that headspace of even being willing to attempt it was a really cool thing for me.
Definitely. Was that the one, did Vivian crew you for that one? Or did you do that one like around here? Or I'm trying to remember.
Which one are you asking about?
The virtual one that you were just talking about in February.
Oh, the virtual one was during the whole year of 2020. I
Oh,
did
got it.
16 of
Okay.
them. So yeah, Vivian was there for at least one of them. Some of them I did without crew. Some of them, my mom was my crew in her car. Some of them different people came out, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, I just remember her, yeah, crewing for you. And I can't remember which race it was, but yeah, it was one of those virtual ones. It was like about a year ago or something. But
Yeah, she's an incredible crew, always ready
I
with the
love her.
sandwiches and the leg rubs and
Oh,
words
I
of
know.
encouragement.
She's mom. I know. She's just so great. I mean, we're almost the same age, but I'm like, she's such a mom, you know.
Yeah.
So how did it feel when you DNF? Did it feel like a death? Or did it feel like, oh, thank God, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Or, because I know, as somebody who is DNF'd a fair amount of times, I've had all those feelings. So.
I will say that both of those DNFs crushed me in the moment. The DNF from Brazos, my first one, took me about 3 weeks to even think about getting over. I was so sad and so certain that I would do it. And then I was able to use that fire and turn around and do my first Jackalope Jam in February of 2019, where I ended up doing 152 miles there. So that was actually my first 100-miler.
Wow.
And so good things came out of it. For Tour de los Tejas, which of course is a trot race, I was raising funds for a mission trip to Costa Rica.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the really big things for me was that I felt like when I stopped, that I was letting everybody down, people who had donated. And the amazing thing that came out of that was that people continued to donate even after they knew that I wasn't going to finish the race. And that touched my heart, that my goal in having people donate to that mission trip was to give people a chance to be part of something bigger than they could be on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't about me and it wasn't about my miles, but I could be a tool to allow people to partner together to do this big thing. And so we ended up raising $7,000 for the mission trip and building a house for a family there in Costa Rica.
Oh my God.
And it was a really cool thing. So it was very difficult to DNF, but at the same time, I learned so much, and I'm looking forward to when I have the opportunity to do the next crazy thing.
That's cool. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that next crazy thing. So yeah, because you've done a few other crazy things,
Mm-hmm.
since then, or yeah. So, so how do you mentally prepare for? I just, I've attempted Snowdrop before, and I don't think I don't think I knew what to expect, and I think that's why I ended up DNFing. I think I got to 50 miles and I was frustrated because I was so slow, and I just was like, why am I, and just like the whole, thing. And then Becky Spalding, the nurse, she said, well, how long do you think it'll take you to get another 12 miles so I could at least claim 100K? And I'm like, well, I don't know. But she was, why don't you just go back to the hotel, get a couple hours of sleep, and then come back, which is exactly what I did. And, and I was glad I accomplished that. But that's a tough race I think mentally. I don't know. How was that for you this time? Because this was your first Snowdrop, right?
It was. So in September, I ran Temptation 200, which is a race where you can stop at any multiple of 50K and get the award that you've earned. The maximum distance is 200K. But if you stop at the off multiples, like 75K, then you're a DNF.
Ugh.
So that's why it's called Temptation. The temptation is to stop. And I had gone out there the year before and done 100K. It's in Illinois at Sandridge State Forest.
Okay.
And
what part of Illinois?
I don't know. We drove there. It's crazy because obviously the temperatures are nothing compared to Habanero, but the sand is even thicker and denser and greater than at Habanero.
Oh.
So it's a pretty intense race. And I was able to do the 150K this past September. I took third female. And I know, I was so excited. It's the first time that I really placed in an ultra. And then my plan was to focus on the Houston Marathon in January, because I just wanted to try something different. I've been getting faster in trails and I wanted to see if that would carry over to the roads, and then to run Jackalope Jam in February. Well, in December, 12 days before Snowdrop, I found out that a friend wasn't going to be able to run Snowdrop, and they were willing to transfer their bib to me. And I have been wanting to do Snowdrop since I first found out about it. I had tried every year to get in. As you know, it sells out very quickly, so I couldn't. Yeah. So 12 days before Snowdrop, I signed up to do Snowdrop, and then I ended up running 125.66 miles out there.
I know.
And then 2 weeks later, I PR'd the Houston Marathon.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. You were, well, yeah, because I mean, I ran with you, briefly at Snowdrop, and because I was doing the relay, and yeah, I mean, you just seemed, undeterred, by that, and I knew you weren't going to stop at 100. You're like Sarisa, which is great, and I don't know. I think there's something about that race that's so uplifting, though. Also, I mean, it's mental. Of course, you're still dealing with all these miles, but it's just so mentally uplifting in some ways too. And yeah, so I mean, I've never been brave enough to go back and try it again. I've just done relays the last 2 times I've been out there, and that's fine. Well, especially this year was hard because it was like Brazos this year. It was so hot. My God, it was like in the 80s, and normally we're freezing to death out there. So.
Snowdrop is really special because of the social interaction and because of the emotional component, since it does raise money for the Snowdrop Foundation for scholarships for pediatric cancer survivors and patients for college scholarships. I love the mission. The social component is similar to Jackalope in that they're both very short loops. For me, that works well because then I don't have to stress if I forget something. I can get it in a mile or a mile and a half or 0.69 of a mile, depending which race it is. And that social component, like seeing you out there on your relay legs and kind of counting down the time until I knew you'd be back out there, getting to meet so many new friends, that's what I really thrive on. So I prefer to do either short loops or point to point. The long loops are hardest for me mentally, because it's such a long time, a long planning period. You don't see people as often in general on long loop courses. And then you have to go back and repeat it 4 or 5, 6 more times.
Yeah, I know. Oh God. So tell me a little bit about this experience. You're just coming. How long ago was that? Like 2 weeks ago? Jackalope? 1 week ago. My God. Feels like we're in a new month. I think that's why yeah. So a week ago. Oh my God. So when did you guys start? Thursday?
We started Wednesday at 9 a.m. and we ran until Sunday at 1 p.m.
Oh my God. And of course, I'm gonna ask the question that everybody always asks. Did you get to sleep?
You're right. They do always ask that. I mean, the way it works with timed races is that once the race clock starts, it doesn't stop until it stops. So it's completely up to you whether you want to take time to eat, to sleep, to sit down or not. But every time you do that, you're taking time away from getting more miles. So it's a difficult balance. This was the first time I've ever done a 100-hour race. It was the first time that the 100-hour option was offered at Jackalope. And the most notable difference between the 72-hour that I've done and the 100-hour is that right around maybe the 60-hour mark, it was very confusing because we had already been running to the point where normally we would be in that window of there's only 24 hours left. Now it's go time, but we still had more than 24 hours left. So I remember talking to another runner out there who has done similar races, and he had the same sentiment. We didn't know if we were supposed to stop and sleep or if we were supposed to keep going. It's just trying to figure out the strategy for the really long haul.
Ugh. And then on top of that, the weather was just awful.
Oh my gosh, it was so awful. It's February. When I did Jackalope before, when I did Tour de los Tejas, February in Texas, there's going to be days where it's 20 degrees and rainy, and there's normally going to be days where it's 80 degrees and you're just sweating. We didn't have any of that. All we had was the feels like 22, and the major thing was the wind. I feel like we expended so much energy fighting that headwind because it's 3/4 of a mile directly into the headwind. Turn around, come back, repeat. So the wind was really an energy sapper. That being said, I did take third female overall with
Congratulations.
175.5 miles. So thank you.
I know, very exciting. I know. I was I was very proud of you. So
Thank
wow.
you, Donna.
So you didn't sleep. You just kind of just kept going then?
I did sleep. It was different than
Rested.
normal. Normally I'll stay awake about 24 hours before I sleep and then I'll sleep. But I took a few naps earlier than I normally would. And then it wasn't until about 40 hours that I went down for my first real sleep. So I think over the course of the 5-ish days, I maybe slept about 14 hours total, which is probably the most I've ever slept in a race.
God.
But it does add up a little after a little while.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it just seems like so did you listen to music or podcasts or just socialize with people? How did you, keep yourself, mentally engaged, I guess?
Yeah. For me, it's very much about the socialization. So no pacers are allowed at Jackalope, but you're out there on this tiny out and back. So you get to see people all the time. So learning everybody's name and calling them out by name and encouraging each other and doing some laps together is really one of the highlights. I got to do laps with at least a dozen different runners, and some of them are friends that I already had from other ultra races, and some of them were people that I just now became friends with. And it's always a joy to spend that time one-on-one and to talk some, but mostly to listen.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So did you ever hit any points where you were just like, oh gosh, I don't know about this, I'm not sure I can do this anymore? Or did you just sort of feel like, I don't want to make it sound like it was a walk in the park, literally. But because I don't want people to not understand the I don't want to say complexity, but I guess that is what it is. Of doing something like this. I mean, it's because I don't want people to think, oh, this is so easy.
Well, every race is different, and I call the ones that are over 100 miles ultras, just because there's something different about the strategy and about the toll that it takes on your body, and about how much weight a mistake can carry. Like if you let yourself get underfed for too many hours, it carries a lot more gravity than, say, in a marathon where you could just push through and then recover later.
Right.
Which, that's not to say that marathons aren't extremely difficult, particularly if you are pushing your heart out to run as fast as you can, but it's a completely different animal. So, yeah, of course there were really hard parts. I think for me, my hitting the 100-mile mark took me 12 hours longer than I had anticipated. Okay. Again, mainly because of that wind. So that was really difficult, just reconciling with, okay, what do I do? How much of that was me versus the weather versus what do I need to change versus can I still achieve my goal? And that's difficult. So I don't know that I hit a wall with this race. I certainly didn't hit a wall at Snowdrop like I have in other races, but I've been at that point where, you just feel like you're going to die and can't breathe and want to cry. And what I've learned is that for me, it usually relates to overheating. And I didn't used to know that. So I used to hit that wall in every 100K, every 100-miler. Once I learned that, and I also learned that if I do hit that wall, I can usually break through it in about 3 miles. So you could just hang in there. That's kind of my own mental thing for me, is I know that I can do anything for 3 miles, whether it's I ran out of water and I'm only 3 miles away from an aid station, or I'm in a wall, I'm 3 miles away from breaking through the wall. Whatever it is, I can handle it for 3 miles. I'm working on saying I can handle it for 4 miles. That's my current goal.
That's ambitious, but yes, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's helpful for people that are thinking about doing these kinds of races, just to kind of, well, and again, speaking for myself, I think that's probably what hit me the first time when I did Snowdrop, was that feeling of, oh my God, why is it taking me so long to get to this 50-mile mark? And, you just kind of need to let it go. And yes. Yeah. And I had trouble with it. So maybe some other time I'll try that. I don't know. So, and you had a crew, and your daughter ran some of this too, right?
Yes, she was amazing. So Aurora is 10
Yeah.
and she's a little bit of a trail runner. She's done a ton of 5Ks. Her old distance PR, we had done birthday miles right before she turned 8. So she did 8 miles at Colorado Crossing a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And her goal for this was to do the 6 hour race. The way this started for her is that she's going to Next Gen Camp, which is church camp at our church this summer. And so they were doing a walkathon to raise money where kids could do laps. And then it turned out that the walkathon was the same weekend as Jackalope Jam. So I asked her if she would like to do the walkathon out at Jackalope Jam instead of doing laps around the gym at church. And she said, yeah, that would be fun. She loves camping. She absolutely loves to be my crew. That is one of her favorite things in the world.
She takes after you.
I was so impressed with her because her goal that she set was to get a distance PR. And I love that she understands the gravity of a distance PR. And that would have required 6 laps for 9 miles. And then she decided to turn it into a fundraiser because she wanted to not only pay for her own camp, but to raise money for other kids to go to church camp too.
Oh,
and yeah, she has such a compassionate heart. So that was her goal. And the morning that she ran was Saturday morning of the race. And it was about 38 degrees and that crazy wind had picked up again. And there was driving rain. If you have seen any of the pictures on the Trot website, everybody was just wearing everything they owned and soaked to the bone. And she went out there and smiled and was like, let's go. And the original plan was to do 1 lap and then she would take a break while I do one and then we do one together. So it was 1 an hour to get to 6 laps in 6 hours. And after the first one, she felt good. After the second one, she felt good. After the third one, she said, okay, I'm going to take a break for this one. And then you get me when you go out for the next one. And she fell completely asleep. She was passed out 100% on the zero gravity chair under the canopy out there in the wind and the rain. And so when I woke her up, I kind of said, Aurora, do you want to come out again? And she said, yeah, I'm coming. And she put on her shoes and she came back out. And then she proceeded to do 5 more laps. So she crushed her goal. She ended up with 8 laps for a total of 12 miles.
Dang. Oh my God.
And yeah, in these conditions on a day that some of the adults were just giving up and going
10.
home at age 10. And she raised $1,400 to send kids to camp.
Oh my God. Well, that's amazing. Well, it sounds like she's definitely a chip off the old blocks. You have another daughter too?
Yes. So AJ is 19 and she's incredible. She is also one of the best crew that I've ever known. She hates it because she worries about me, she says, but she is so good at the tough love, at just knowing what I need, taking care of me, and then kicking me back out of the tent or the truck or wherever it is to get me back on the trail. So she was able to come out and join us for one night, which was fantastic.
That's great. That's great. So, well, it sounds like
and actually,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to tell you one more thing about AJ. I know you've seen this before, but I don't know if you know the story. That's actually a painting that AJ did of me before I completed my first 100-miler.
Really? Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was so meaningful to me because it's me on a trail at sunset and I'm passing a little sign that says mile 99. So her belief in me that I would finish 100 miles before I even really believed myself that I could do it, but I was trying that, just means the world to me. So, and she has a Bible verse painted in there. It's 1 Corinthians 9:25 that says that all athletes train with discipline, but some train for the prize that will fade away, and we train for the prize that will last forever, for the glory of God.
Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh, I love that. And your faith does play a big role also in your mental game, from what I've been able to grasp. So tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. As I alluded before, I feel like it's a gift from God. So along with the gift comes the responsibility. But when I was going through my divorce, every time that I would run an ultra, I felt like God clearly taught me a lesson. Very simple lessons, but one lesson each race that I could then take from the trail and apply to real life. And an example of that is to not make things harder than they have to be. So for instance, going to an ultra and only getting 3 hours of sleep the night before and not having the right nutrition with you, I've done it. I can do it. I can finish the race. But there's no extra glory in making it harder on yourself. If you get a full night's sleep, you eat the right food, you can do hard things well. So that was a big lesson for me. Another one was about looking back, and this is something so simple, and we see it and hear it all the time in everyday life. But for me, I needed that physical, tangible illustration of what it was. So I was running an ultra on some difficult, muddy, steep terrain. And when I would stop and sort of look back to see if somebody was coming up from behind me, it was taking so much of my time to do that rather than just running my race, understanding that I had value and that I deserved to be on the trail and that they would tell me when they were ready to pass me. And I really learned that stopping and waiting and undervaluing myself was hurting my future potential and my future progress. So that was something, again, that I could carry from the trail into my everyday life.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So do you think the ultra running also kind of helped you deal with the um, emotions of going through that divorce?
Oh, absolutely. It was unfortunately an abusive situation. So I went through some PTSD and a lot of work with a counselor and pastors, and just, I worked very hard. But the ultra running was a huge part of that, because that's where I get my quiet time. That's where I can revel in running in God's creation, in this body that He created, that He allows me to use out there in the midst of what He created. It's where I can pray. I have literally fallen down on my knees purposefully to pray in the middle of an ultra. It is also where I get to minister to other people, pray with them. Out at Jackalope Jam, even, we were in the middle of a loop, and a runner that I had spoken to earlier in the race saw me coming and said, "I need prayer right now." So we just stopped right in the middle of the trail and we prayed together. And those moments are so meaningful to me. I want to always be obedient in listening when He gives me these chances and opportunities to speak into people's lives.
That's lovely. I really like that a lot. I mean, I'm not as I tend to be much more of an agnostic, but I do feel God's presence, and do have my conversations, when I'm out there on the trails, and
Yes.
yes, and I think trail running does, lend itself to that. So I think it's, there's something, yeah, because I mean, I mean, maybe you can do that in a road race, but I tend to think that it's going to happen much more often when you are, out on the trails, and
But the most important thing for me is just to acknowledge that this is not something that I could do on my own. That
right.
For me, I
Mhm.
know and I believe that it's through His power that I have this gift of ultra running. And I really did not have it before. And now it's something that I have. And so I try to honor that by using it well, by continuing to do these hard things.
And that you can.
Yes.
That's so cool. So what is next? What's the next crazy thing that you've got on your agenda?
Well, I'm sure there will be a few races between now and the fall, but my eyes on the prize, so to speak. I just signed up for the inaugural Cowboy 200 miler in Nebraska in November.
God, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's a racing company that I have not raced with before, called Ultraverse.
Okay.
And they put on some really great races that I have friends that have run with them, but I personally have not had the opportunity. It's a unique 200 miler in that it's on fairly flat land. It is a point to point, and you only have access to crew roughly once every 50K. So it'll be something different for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's flat, because I know I've been to Omaha and, spent a little time running there, just, and it was pretty hilly. I was surprised, and I was like, oh my gosh, but that sounds pretty exciting. So what do you think you might be doing during the summer, or do you have anything planned for the summer?
I am looking for a timed race probably in May. Right now, my legs are still a little tight.
As well
I
they
think
should be.
I think that's kind of a function of doing the 125 at Snowdrop and then less than 2 months later doing the 175 at
That's great.
Jackalope. So I just need to get everything loosened up, but I really, really enjoy the timed format. So I'm looking at another timed race in either April or May. And then after that, I'm just going to kind of see what opportunities come up and what fun things come my way. One note about the flat race is theoretically, flat is great. However, I tend to modulate my pace by hiking the ups and running the downs.
Yeah.
And there's no ups or downs.
Oh. Oh.
So it really brings something different to the game as far as mental strategy and pacing and keeping yourself going.
For sure. Well, I've got one for you. I mean, it might be a little too soon, but it's and I'm gonna do the 8-hour one, but it's the Vernal Equinox. It's April 1st, and it's in Batavia, Ohio, which is where I grew up, which is like the craziest. I was like, oh my God, as soon as I found out about this being in Batavia, it's like this little place and it's on a farm, but they've got 48-hour, 24-hour, 12-hour, 8-hour. And I also was using it as an excuse to go see my family. And so I was originally signed up for the 12, but then I was like, well, I really want to see my family more, so, but anyway, so there's that.
So have you done, other than Snowdrop, have you done a timed event before?
No, not that I can think of. No. And I kind of like them. I do. I mean, this is going to be interesting because I'm already, kind of imagining, what kind of, mileage I might be able to get out of this. But again, I don't really know what the terrain is like. Apparently it's like a 2-mile loop thing and you get to leave your drop bag in a clean horse stall.
That's good. That's a good
yeah,
detail.
I know. But yeah, I don't know. So that's why I thought, well, baby steps. Let's do the 8-hour. That might be good. And especially, I'm theoretically coming off of Rocky still. I'm fine. But
right.
But yeah, I don't really want to tear myself up either. I'm noticing that my hip today was a little sore after I ran. I'm like, oh God, I hope I'm not getting too old again. I probably just need to do clamshells or something. It's just I'm really bad about doing some of those preventative things, but anyway, so I thought I'd throw that one out there. So if
well, I will definitely go look it up.
Yeah, it's called the Vernal Equinox. You can find it on Ultra Sign Up, and I don't think it's especially expensive or anything like that. I don't really know much else about it. The only reason I found out about it is young lady I know kind of tangentially through the guy who does the 10 Junk Miles podcast. I don't know if you've ever, Holly Lindroth. She posted something about it. And I'm like, holy cow, this is in Ohio. This is in Batavia. I've got to do this, It's like the middle of the semester. I'm just, like, I don't care. I'm going to go see my family. My 15-year-old nephew is like really jazzed about it. And so yes, my sister's going to drop me off that morning, and then they're going to come back and scoop up my carcass, and we'll go eat or something like that. But I think it might be kind of cool because my nephew is supposed to come visit me this summer, for like a week or something like that. And I would like to drag him to a trail race. I'm sure he probably would find it to be incredibly boring, but just to kind of, but this might be an introductory, sort of way for him to experience that. But yeah, but I don't know. He loves his Aunt Nina. So, maybe I can con him into something. So I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, is there anything else I have not asked you about that you feel like you would like people to know?
Well, I know offline we had talked a little bit about the coaching.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that was my bad. Yes, let's talk about your coaching, because yes, you are theoretically, well, you are technically my coach among other people. So tell us a little bit. How'd you get into that?
It's really about my passion for trail running and ultra running, and my favorite thing about all of it is the empowerment. That is my number one, hands down, favorite thing about running, whether it's trail running, road running, ultra running. I think that the more variables you add to it, like the trail and then ultras, then of course there are different types of empowerment that come from that. But ORR, the San Antonio Roadrunners Off-Road Runners, is such an amazing program. And for me, that's where I discovered this. That's where I first learned, between ORR and trail racing over Texas races, that I was worthy of space, that I could look people in the eyes, that I could have these conversations, that I could do these hard things. And previously, when I was a young woman, I had a lot of confidence. But when I came back into trail running, I did not have any. And I had to work hard to regain that. So for me, having these accomplishments that nobody could take away and nobody could claim, because regardless of your coaches, your pacers, your crew, whatever it may be, you're the one that has to take every step. And once you've done it, you've done it. For instance, it doesn't matter if you, Donna, never complete another ultra in your life, you will always be an ultra runner. You will always have completed that.
Right.
So that sense of empowerment is huge for me. And when I first started running with ORR, we used to have a position called the SAG runner, which was the person that ran with the very last person.
That's how I met you.
Yes. And so my first season, the SAG runner was with me every single week. But I never felt bad, and I learned so much from him. So the next season, I volunteered to be in that position, and I felt so much gratitude that I could give back, and I could do that for the next person. And so it just kind of grew from there. I mentored. From there, I became a mentor, and from there I got certified with Roadrunners Club of America as a running coach. And then I was an assistant coach for a couple of our different distance teams. And then this last season was my first season as the head coach.
Yes.
And it's these little stories about the first time that someone runs in the woods on their own, the first time that someone runs in the dark, the first time that someone runs more than 3 miles, the first time that whatever it is, you can see this flower of self-realization and potential opening, and that confidence growing. And I know firsthand how that translates into real life, non-running life. And that's what makes it worth it to me, is to see people experience that, be in community together, and build each other up.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, yeah, I think that's why it's my, my tribe, if you will.
Yes.
I mean, I think, trail runners tend to be very giving people, very supportive. I mean, even the elites, it's like, you can see them out there, again, when you're slow like me, you always see the first place guy, whizzing past you. And, I'm like, you're first, stuff like that. And they're like, thanks, or, if you fall, people are there to, pick you up. And, I mean, it's just like, I'm not so sure people would do that in a road race, so I don't know. There's just a different vibe about it that I think it appeals to a certain kind of person. And it's not to say that people that do road races are somehow bad or anything like that.
No.
But I do think the trail culture is a very unique and special culture. And it's definitely something, that I feel very proud to be a part of. And like I say,
I love how inclusive it is also. It doesn't matter what size you are, if you're a tiny little petite skinny thing, or if you're a over 6 foot tall person who's maybe carrying a little bit more weight than some of the other runners that you see out there. That has nothing to do with how you are going to finish and how many miles you're going to achieve and what it means for you and what your personal record is. Yeah, we have runners. Well, for instance, at Jackalope Jam, Aurora was the youngest at 10, and she did a lap with Gene, who was the oldest at 86, and he was finishing his 100K. Yeah. And so it's a time when, like you said, regardless of ability, place in life, religion, sexual orientation, identity, career, family, none of that impacts how many miles you are capable of finishing. And because of that, everyone is welcome, and all walks of life are celebrated.
Yes, I agree. So very well said. Very well said. Well, Agatha, I am so grateful to have gotten this opportunity to talk to you, and happy to have you be the second in my Profiles in Courage. And again, Profiles in Courage is actually, I think it's the name of a book that John F. Kennedy wrote. So
Yes.
it's not like I created that phrase. So I want to give a little credit out there. So, yeah. So, and those of you in San Antonio, is there going to be a summer off-road group? Do we think?
We do not have an official training program over the summer. We do open up the Facebook page, SARRORR, so SARRORR, to everybody local so that you can kind of meet up with other trail runners.
Got
And
it.
then when our next training season starts at the end of summer, then
That's
we'll make the page private for people who are enrolled in the training program. And we always have a goal race, but I really feel like the ORR community is so special, and it's one of the few trail based things in San Antonio that, you know, it's great to do the goal race. I encourage everybody to do it, but it's definitely not a requirement for joining the program.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I was very excited because I discovered this week that Prickly Pear is actually Sunday of this
Yes.
coming week, and because I'm going up to volunteer at the
J&J?
J&J, yeah,
Yeah.
J&J Friday and Saturday. Well, I'm coming back Saturday, and and so I was like, oh my God, I can do this race. So I just signed up for the 15K.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I was really glad to be
That's
part of
excellent.
that. So anyway, well, once again, thank you so much. Hang loose for one quick second. I'm going to stop recording. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Agatha. Again, she's very inspirational. She's a lovely person. And I hope if you are, sorry, my cat's climbing up a screen right now. Hey, he thinks he's Spider Cat. There he goes. He just dropped down. Ooh, it's so interesting to be me sometimes. Anyway, yeah, so if you are in San Antonio and you want to join a really fun group of people, you know, for a training group, you know, look into the San Antonio Road Runners, Off-Road Runners, ORR, and yeah, come join us. There are no more trainings until late summer, although, you know, we still do some informal meetups and whatnot during the summer. But anyway, yeah, so there's that. I did, speaking of San Antonio off-road runners, I discovered this week that I am available to run the Prickly Pear 15K, which is like about 9 miles, this coming Sunday. And I thought that the race was going to be on Saturday, and I'm going to be volunteering Friday and Saturday up at Camp Eagle for Tejas Trails. I come up, you know, midday on Friday and leave midday Saturday. And so I was very excited to find out that I could still do this race. And it's a fun race. It's at McAllister Park. That is the Prickly Pear. And yeah, it's at McAllister Park in San Antonio. It's kind of like our, you know, go-to place. And yeah, so we're going to do that. And or I'm going to do that and, you know, see how I do. I mean, good Lord, yesterday I joined the off-road group for a group run, which I haven't really been able to do because the weather's just been so atrocious, at least for me. And yeah, so it was really nice. We finally are kind of breaking out of the crappy weather, although it's going to get bad again this week. So gotta love March. But anyway, yeah, so I hooked up with some people in this group, you know, the 15K group, and they're like, oh, well, we're going to do intervals. Do you want to join us? And I'm like, of course, that'd be fun, you know. The problem is that they're a lot faster than I am, and they took off, and I'm the caboose trying to hang on, and just gave up after a while. I mean, I didn't give up running, but I just gave up on hanging with them because it was just sort of like, okay, this is dumb. I'm not going to be able to do this. And it's fine. I mean, you know, as I told, you know, Sandra, one of the other runners, I'm like, look, you know, it's fine. It's like, if you guys drop me, or, you know, if you guys keep going and I'm back here, don't worry. Okay, I'm fine. I'm used to this. Yeah. And so I ended up blazing some new trails that I haven't been on before. And yeah, and just kind of got in like 4 miles, but yeah, so it was all right. And then I did another 5 today, and I've, you know, done a few miles here and there during the week, nothing too extravagant. But anyway, yeah, so I think that's all I've got for now. I will see you next time.